Hello everyone, and thanks for taking the time to watch this recording. I put this together to both give an overview of every detail of this journey and to answer many of the questions and statements that have arisen over the course of the last few weeks. I have to go over more than 7 years worth of history, but I will try to condense this as much as possible. So, as quick as I can, the history of this is that back in 2012, a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, which is basically an agreement, was created between the town, the school department, and the recreation department to better help outline the responsibilities of each entity. And within that MOU was a non-compete clause that states that no group will be allowed to rent space in school buildings to run any programs for profit or hold any other event or program which may be considered in direct competition with any parks, recreation, and community education offerings or events. So why was this a problem? Because this clause has been invoked multiple times ever since it was created, and it's been invoked for things that it really never should have been used for. So how did I get involved? Before the MOU even existed, some of you who have lived in the town for quite some time may remember the former recreation director, Lisa Paradis, who was the reason the rec department became so successful back then, and she packed the programs that ran at that time. She and I together helped to build a summer camp fair for the town. And for those of you wondering what a summer camp fair is, it's basically an event that showcases various summer camps, gymnastics camp, a computer camp, overnight camp, arts and crafts, and the rec department would showcase its own camp. We had over 100 parents that would come and attend the event each year, so it was an obvious benefit to the community. But besides my involvement in that fair, I'd also been informed that the the Littleton High School tennis team was about to be canceled. They didn't have that much interest. The interest was waning, and there was no one to run it. So at the last minute, I took it over. And the first year, the team did not win a single match, but by the fifth year, we won the league, which was the first time this happened in 40 years. So with that success, I had a parent come to me and tell me that her daughter would really like to try the sport, but tennis is expensive to the point that it wasn't worth it for her daughter to even give it a shot. So I thought about that and figured, what would it cost me to get a bunch of rackets and balls, donate my time, pay for some helpers, and get something like that off the ground? So I went for it, and we called it Try Tennis, TRY-tennis. And the premise was that any child who had never had a lesson could come and participate. And that's really the thing to think about here, right? It was for kids who had never had a lesson. So it wasn't as if these kids were getting pulled out of some other program or was really competing with anything. It was designed to give exposure to kids who had never had exposure to tennis. Um, it was for just 1 hour a week for 3 weeks, so just 3 lessons, and it was a huge success. We had over 30 kids come and jump in, and if anyone wanted instruction beyond that, then they could pay to enroll in a paid class. But otherwise, kids for the first time would at least get to see if they enjoyed the sport at no cost to them and their families. So Lisa ended up taking a great position out in Brookline, and she was replaced by another rec director by the name of Kate Hodges. Kate was the director back when the MOU was ratified, and my first experience with that MOU was when I was informed that the school could no longer rent out the cafeteria for the summer camp fair because rec specifically told them not to allow that. I tried calling Kate twice. I could not get a return phone call. I tried emailing her a few times. I could not get a response that way. Not that long afterwards, I tried to run another Try Tennis class. Guess what? I got the same response as I did about the camp fair. Not allowed. So now we have a summer camp fair, and we have free tennis lessons that are being prohibited without any logical cause. But what are my options? What would you do? Do you walk away when you're bullied, or do you press on? So I chose to press on because I wanted some sort of reasonable answer as to why anybody would ever do something like this. So after doing some digging, it became apparent that the rec department was struggling. After Lisa left, programs were not filling as they used to, and the rec department was losing about $40,000 a year. So at this point, the town of Littleton very firmly told the rec department that it wanted to see rec programs being self-funded. Rec's response to this was to use this non-compete clause to clamp down on anything that in their mind resembled recreation in order to drive business to their door. But understand how the non-compete works. If they if they want a program, their thought process is, well, look, we'll succeed by not allowing residents to even see another program. So they won't have an option. They won't have a choice, and that's kind of our thinking. But since I couldn't get a response from the director, and it was apparent that the rec department was struggling, I contacted the rec commission. And at that time, I had a very novel and progressive idea. I went and created a recreational management program called CRAFT. Um, the acronym stands for Community Recreation Association for Towns. And the idea being to manage recreation in Littleton and instantly wipe out that $40,000 loss. In other words, I was the one willing to take the risk. But you have to understand, I also saw the program when it ran well, and then I saw it, years later when it was struggling to the point that they felt they needed to try to isolate themselves, which is really not the way most rec departments work. Um, so again, I thought it was a very elegant solution. I brought it to the rec commission and asked for an audience. They made it clear they were not interested in meeting, and instead they accused me of disseminating personal and private information, which until recently I wasn't even exactly sure what it was referring to. But in looking back at one of the letters I sent, there was a line that said, and again, this is from me to them, being that I last heard that your current recreation director was a finalist for a position in Natick in January of this year, and I wrote this letter back in February. So this is well after that point. I thought this would be a great time to have a conversation. If she accepts the job, then it could be the ideal time to look at what could be a great partnership. So in other words, the information about her job interview was very much common knowledge in the rec world. However, the rec commission was either at least partially unaware or maybe fully unaware, um, and was trying to suppress this fact that their director, who they supported, was off job hunting. I don't know which, but either way, they did not want it formally recognized, and the information was in no way private, particularly since she had been discussing it with the public, but maybe not with them, or maybe in Littleton. I couldn't tell you. But around this time, I was being approached by other residents about other programs having had similar issues. The Littleton Parents Association was not allowed to rent middle school space for an Easter egg hunt, and they were told that your Easter egg hunt may compete with our Easter egg hunt. Now, bear in mind, both Easter egg hunts are free, no charge to anybody. There was a similar issue with a Halloween party, but eventually Kate did end up leaving, and I chose to wait until a new director was hired in order to give it another try. The new director is the one we have now. Her name is Alicia Day. So again, I tried to do it all the right way. I sent one email, I sent a second email, and after getting no response, I asked someone who communicates with her on occasion to please prompt her for a response. I get a meeting. So we have a sit down, and it was clear from the beginning that anything I had to offer was really not welcome. Hey, I'd love to have an after-school program running at the Tiger's Den. The response was, well, we already have one at Shaker Lane. What about the Tiger's Den? We're all set. Hey, I used to run a summer camp fair. Would love to get it going again. Yeah, we'll take that under consideration. I would like to try and get a middle school team off the ground. We're already working on that. So the same wall is up that I experienced previously. So I reached out to the Rec Commission again since some time had passed and many of its members had changed out. And it took 5 years to get this meeting, but yes, I did manage to do it. And I will say that that meeting was the one productive element in this entire 7-year pursuit. The Commission did greenlight the middle school team initiative, and as a result of that, we now have a successful spring middle school program. On the tri-tennis portion, though, it was not discussed, and they made it clear it was not going to be discussed. So on one hand, I appreciate that the middle school team was able to get launched. Great. But on the other, I'm still not understanding why a very short, free introductory program is not getting support. So from here, I reach out to the Board of Selectmen, and I do manage to get a response from the chair of the board, Chuck DeCoste. And his letter to me, and this is one paragraph from that email. Marcus, I would like to have a meeting or phone conversation to better understand what your ask is. My view with the information that I have is that if you choose to do a clinic as a varsity coach in our district, there should be no, and the word no is capitalized, no reason for you not to be able to do so. And in a follow-up email, He even writes, I'm sorry you face so much frustration. I assure you we'll get you a resolution as quickly as possible. So naturally, I'm thinking, wow, higher up the food chain, someone actually gets this. So what's the problem this time, right? The problem was that even though he agrees to meet up, and even though he agrees to, hey, or even a phone call, he would not give me a time. And it wasn't like a week, even a month, or even 2 months. So after 3 months, okay, I really kind of, again, remember 3 months, and this is 5 years down the road. Um, I get my attorney involved, and I create a website, littletontennis.com. And what do the Board of Selectmen do when they receive my first letter? They don't do anything. Then my attorney sends a second letter. Again, no response, which is the first time I've ever heard of a board getting a legal, a professional legal letter like that and not doing anything. But that's what they did. And then by the third letter, which was really a demand letter, a response does come from their legal counsel with some counter arguments. So the next step was to either file a full legal challenge, or an even better idea that was offered by a resident was to simply start a petition and create a bylaw that would codify how resources are allocated and make it clear that those resources are subject to a that those resources are not subject to a non-compete provision. So a number of families supported that idea, and one such family was Liz and Jeff Armento. They're two Littleton residents who volunteered to be the lead petitioners for it, and together they've helped to coordinate the effort, and I was the one who gathered the signatures. 10 signatures gets you on the annual town warrant. 100 gets you onto a scheduled town meeting, but the goal from the beginning was to get 200 signatures so that there would be a special town meeting specifically for this issue. Um, First of all, had it only been 10 or 100 signatures, and if it went to a scheduled meeting, it would have been stuck at the end of it, which no doubt the Board of Selectmen would have gladly done. But also with 200 signatures, it makes a much bigger statement than having just 10 or 100. So on May 21st, those signatures were submitted, and here we are just days away from the meeting date. So there you have it. That's the entire history of this journey, and most of it has been documented across two websites, which are, again, freelittleton.com, littletontennis.com, as well as a couple associated Facebook pages. But there are questions and some statements that have come out that I'm more than happy to answer, so let's get to it. On June 17th, there was a Park and Rec meeting in which many things were said. The problem is that there were a lot of inaccuracies. And to begin with, the chairman, Mike, and his name is spelled Proulx, Mike Prue, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, stated that he had invited the petitioners. Now, after the video was posted on a town Facebook page, the posting said, while the petitioners and Marcus Lewis were encouraged to join, they did not actually attend. They did not attend. No, I'm afraid none of that is true. Neither the petitioners nor I received any sort of formal invitation to that meeting because we would have gladly attended. There was something about a Facebook post suggesting that Jeff attend, but the fact is that Mike, the chairman, ended up emailing Jeff an apology that he had apparently made a mistake with his email. But you don't see that in the video, and otherwise, those of you who've only seen that video would never know this information. Secondly, Park and Rec on multiple occasions has said that they don't like the language of the bylaw that's being proposed, and that it is ageist. They feel that it puts youth before others. They feel that it puts, again, gives priority to some programs that they don't like that. And we have said from the get-go that we're more than happy to amend the language. But how do you do that if you aren't willing to sit down and talk? So in the video, the chairman seems to be very willing to have a meeting. But after he eventually gets in touch with Jeff and apologizes to him for the mistake, he invites Jeff to have a conversation, and Jeff responds that he would like us to all sit down. And what Mike writes is that, I'm not, however, willing to meet with Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lewis has no standing on this matter and really isn't part of the process at this point. As I detailed Monday night, the town has heard from Mr. Lewis many times over. He doesn't live here and he does not pay taxes here. It's up to you and or your wife to convey your concerns to the town. So no, I have not received any sort of invitation to discuss the petition. Not only that, it's been made clear that no one wants to have a discussion with me about it, but how do you have the discussion without the guy who has the most information about the topic? One of the interesting challenges to the language is that Alicia Day states that she doesn't understand how to interpret the word community in the language of the proposed bylaw. And her words are, does this mean Neshoba Valley? Does community mean if this is regional? Interestingly, the word community is also used in the language of the MOU. So I'd like to know how it is that one can understand exactly what the word community means in the MOU, but not understand what it means in the petition. Look, the proposed bylaw language was drafted by legal experts in municipal law. The language was sent over to the Attorney General's office, and they had no problem with it. So my suggestion is that anyone watching, visit freelittleton.com, take a look at the language for yourself. Don't let me or anyone tell you how to interpret it. Read it. If it makes sense, great. If you read it and it doesn't make sense, then come to the meeting on this coming Wednesday and suggest a change to it. That's fine. But also at that Park and Rec meeting, it was stated by the chairman that I had met with the former rec director, Kate Hodges. No, not only have I never met Kate, if you showed me a picture of her, I wouldn't even know what she looks like. I've never met her, been in her presence, communicated directly, or anything like that. That's part of the problem of this whole thing. It was also stated, it was stated that to say that Mr. Lewis is looking for a conversation is wrong, plain and simple. Thank goodness for email, because Kate would not meet with me. The rec commission at that time would not meet with me. Alicia met with me after multiple email attempts, and as I mentioned earlier, she had no desire to engage. And yes, I did meet with the rec department. That is true. It was the most fruitful discussion that I've had in this travel. But when I tried to have a discussion about the free programs, that was not going to be discussed. And finally, I go to the Board of Selectmen, and obviously they didn't want to chat with me either. So to say that I'm not looking for a conversation when that's what I've been saying all along, it's like someone said to me the other day, you know what, it's like two people go to a movie theater and they're watching the same movie screen, but they're seeing a completely different movie. But maybe the biggest issue that the opposition has tried to perpetuate is that I am responsible for the cost of the special town meeting, which many people are upset about, and justifiably so. But let me preface this by saying that no one seemed to know the actual cost of a special town meeting until the clerk did the math after the petition was submitted. Because if it were known how much it was going to cost, then the Armentos and I would have definitely waited until after, or rather until the next scheduled town meeting. But if someone wants to make the argument that I am the cause, yeah, I will say that there is a legitimate argument for saying that I am partly responsible. I could have given up this cause at any point. I am the one who collected the 200 signatures, and a special town meeting was the goal. On the other hand, the Board of Selectmen are equally, if not more, responsible. If the BOS chairman had simply followed up as he said he was going to, if the BOS answered the legal letters as they should have, if the BOS had simply said something when they were aware of the campaign, which was launched back in the fall of 2018, then this would have been an easy fix. But most egregiously, the lead petitioner contacts the assistant town manager in mid-April and contacts him again in May, specifically asking for guidance. And some of the board members, the select members, were CC'd on this email. They got it. And guess what? They chose not to respond. And again, the petitioner is asking for guidance and no help. So, as I said in a public statement some time ago, and I'll say it now, this meeting has been estimated to cost the town $13,000. I will voluntarily cover 50% of it, and I will write a check to the town for $6,500 if the Board of Selectmen will do the same. They can split it 5 ways, 2 ways. If the cost of this meeting is what the hangup is, then I will pay my fair share of it. But the BOS need to step up and own the fact that they intentionally chose to be silent when they could have completely intervened. So the one group I would really like to have a direct conversation with, although I doubt it'll happen, are the Friends of the Seniors in Littleton. I had a great conversation with their Vice President, Nancy Levine, who has on a few occasions described my conversation with her group as being sugar-coated and that I was not forthcoming about the fact that it was going to be a special town meeting. She said that I spoke about a tennis camp or tennis program, which is completely true. Almost every time I talk about this, I mention the tennis program that was not able to run. That is definitely a part of it. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that, again, the primary issue with her and the seniors is that there's a heavy cost to the special town meeting and that I was not forthcoming about that fact. All I can say is that, if anything, when people would come to me, if it came up in conversation, I was more than happy to say, look, I'm getting 200, not 10, not 100, but 200 signatures so that this will trigger its own meeting. Um, I certainly may not have said it in my presentation, and if I thought that would have been of importance, believe me, I certainly would have said that. Um, but otherwise, it was really something that I was more than happy to share, and it also said at the top of the petition. So I apologize if there was confusion or misunderstanding there. My hope is that when the seniors and others go to the special town meeting, that you don't vote on, well, this cost us 13,000. Let's let's vote it down. Hey, we don't like this. I'm hoping they vote on the merits of it. Do you feel that a non-compete is in the town's best interest? That's what it's really all about. But along those lines, I'm a firm believer that when you say something and you make a public statement, you should really be willing to stand behind your words. So I would like to make a few statements to officially set the record straight on some things. And the first thing is that if I am wrong or I am inaccurate, because there's a lot of hearsay that's going back and forth, but if I'm wrong or I'm inaccurate and I received a formal invite to the June 17th meeting, as a Facebook posting says I did, I will pay for the entire special town meeting. If Jeff Armento was formally invited and received an email or phone call to attend that meeting, as the chairman suggests he did in that video, and if he did not apologize for that, sending out that invitation, as I'm stating that's what happened, again, I will pay for that entire meeting. Despite myself being open to having a conversation with Mike, if he did not, as I stated, refuse to sit with the petitioners and myself, again, I will pay for the cost of the entire meeting. Again, the chairman said that the notion of Mr. Lewis being ignored was not true. Okay, and that basically it's plain and simple. If I'm unable to produce at least double-digit instances of times where emails have been unanswered, I will pay for the entire special town meeting. And lastly, it was stated by another rec commission member that that his issue was never providing free tennis to anybody. He wanted to run a for-profit program. He was told no, and his interpretation in his memory is somewhat faulty. Now, that's a pretty bold statement. One thing I will agree with about that statement is, yes, my memory can be pretty faulty, especially with all of the gray hair coming in, but that's why I love email. I hold in my hand an email that was sent to the school, and that was also sent to Kate Hodges. And the second page of it, it says, I have a concern that my Try Tennis initiative may be affected. Every few years, I offer a series of completely free tennis lessons to the kids of Littleton. My staff and I volunteer to give any child between the ages of 5 and 13 a series of 3 free lessons. So, yeah, my memory can be a little faulty, but Kate got a hold of this, and this was back in 2012. So this is in the beginning. So yeah, if I'm not right and and what I've said is false, which again, people are saying that what I've said is not true, I'll pay for the whole meeting. But I do feel, or I do wonder if others who make those statements would somehow, again, back up their facts. But look, this is really nothing less than what I expected when I decided to follow what I believe in, which is why I've been documenting and cataloging everything that happened since the beginning. There are going to be those individuals who are going to show up at the meeting, and their issue will be that I'm not a resident. Their issue will be that I am trying to tell the town what to do with their resources, that I've cost the town $13,000. But I'm hopeful that there will be those of you who will show up and make statements based on the merits of the proposition. Do you feel as a resident that a non-compete clause is somehow beneficial to the town? Do you feel that limiting choices and options is truly good for the community? Park and Rec will tell you that they have not done anything like that in recent days, and that the examples I give are from a past time. Yeah, one could say that a number of those examples are from quite some time ago. But the fact is that it was the current administration that went after the library girls in coding program. Um, there was a girls in coding program, again, that they told, no, we don't want you to run that. Was it a few years ago? Yeah. Has there been anything else since then? Probably not. But you know why? Because in a sense, the war on this whole thing is already over, and the campaign has been successful. People have felt that my ultimate goal or object was to change the MOU or create a bylaw. No, my goal was to make it so that Park and Rec cannot stop programs from happening when those programs are a benefit to the community. The middle school team never would have happened if I had not pushed it. For the first time in 7 years, Park and Rec offered free tennis lessons. In fact, that's the first time they've ever offered free tennis lessons. But it happened because of this campaign. I don't believe that that many things would have changed if not for the past 7 years and this effort. So I'm sure in the future, if the library wants to offer another class of some sort, PRCE will think twice before putting any pressure on them, or they'll have a gentle conversation versus maybe telling them. This is how you affect change. So obviously the one difference is that, sure, we wish it would have gone to a regular meeting. It would not have cost the town $13,000. Certainly that would have been a nice change. But think of the coming vote as being insurance. It's to ensure that down the road, when maybe there's a new administration in place, history does not repeat itself. So I hope there is a great turnout, whether you are for or against the proposed bylaw. I personally think that apathy and having no one come would be the absolute worst outcome, and it would be a complete waste of every dollar to have that happen. But otherwise, the door is always open. So if you have questions, if you want backup, you want documentation, just drop me a note, Marcus at marcuslewisenterprises.com, and I will respond promptly to you. But thanks for your time. If you managed to make it through the entire recording, thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the meeting.